Listen, I am about to tell you something that will shatter everything you believe about advanced civilizations. For 3,000 rotations, my species, the Vethrid, conquered galaxies with our superior medical technology. We could regrow limbs. We could cure diseases that shouldn't even have names. We were stoppable, until we met a human named Marcus Sullivan, who was bleeding to death and refused to stay dead. What happened next wasn't just impossible, it was downright insulting to our entire medical philosophy. My designation is Kel-Varn, and I am a senior medical technician for the Vethrid Collective. When I received the distress call about the crash landing on Station Omega-7, I thought it would be routine. A simple rescue, a quick stabilization, maybe a commendation for my file. I had performed 17,000 successful procedures. My success rate was 99.97%. I was, without question, the finest biological engineer in this sector. The human, however, had other plans. When they wheeled the body into my medical bay, I immediately ran my diagnostic scanners. The readings made my sensory organs twitch. This creature, this Marcus Sullivan, had suffered catastrophic trauma, multiple compound fractures, severe internal hemorrhaging. His central processing unit, brain they call it, had swelling that should have resulted in immediate neural shutdown. His internal organs were quite literally rearranging themselves in his torso like some kind of grotesque reorganization party. In any rational species, this would be it. Game over. We would log the casualty and move forward. But here is where the universe started laughing at me. He is still showing neural activity, I informed my assistant Tilak in what I thought was a perfectly objective tone. How is that remotely possible? His oxygen saturation levels are, well, they should not exist in positive numbers. Tilak, a younger Vethrid, with scales that shimmered like processed minerals, peered at the readouts with genuine confusion. His heart is beating, though it appears to be doing so incorrectly. The rhythm is absolutely chaotic. That is the problem, I snapped, perhaps with more frustration than professional decorum allowed. It should not be beating at all. According to every database we have, every medical standard, every logical principle of biological maintenance, he should be dead. But he is just lying there, muttering something in his native tongue about needing coffee. What in the name of the convergence is coffee, and why is he worried about it at a time like this? This was my first mistake. I assumed human physiology operated on the same principles as ours. The Vethrid are crystalline-based organisms. Wait, you said not to use that word, but our structure is fundamentally different from carbon-based creatures. Our bodies are networked systems. If one section fails, the whole organism becomes inefficient. We have redundancy, yes, but not the chaotic, seemingly random redundancy of these humans. Humans are, well, they are like asking a computer to function while randomly deleting parts of its code and expecting it to somehow keep running anyway. Initiate cellular regeneration protocol, I commanded, activating the medical chamber that surrounded Sullivan's body. Harmonic frequencies filled the bay, designed to accelerate cellular repair at the molecular level. This technology had saved thousands of lives. Limbs had been restored, organs had been replaced. The Vethrid medical field was legendary across known space. The chamber hummed with magnificent purpose. Nothing happened. Well, not nothing. His heart rate increased. His breathing became more labored. His eyes flickered open for a moment and he looked directly at me, with an expression of pure confusion before muttering something that Tilak had to translate from the human linguistic database. He says the vibrations are making him nauseous, Tilak reported, sounding genuinely uncertain. He's asking if you are actually trying to kill him. I deactivated the chamber immediately. My sensory organs were overheating, a sign of significant emotional agitation in my species. The regeneration protocol is non-invasive. It has been tested on thousands of species. Perhaps, Tilak suggested carefully, those thousands of species did not include carbon-based life forms with such unusual pain responses. Sullivan groaned from the medical pod. He actually groaned. Pain apparently was his body's way of communicating that something was wrong. Such an inefficient system. Among the Vethrid, pain is barely perceptible. We simply receive data about tissue damage. We analyze, we respond, we do not emit sounds and make everything difficult. I approached the pod carefully, my upper appendages folded in what I hoped was a posture of medical authority. Your trauma assessment indicates 6 different critical failures in your biological systems. You should not be conscious. You should not be speaking. You should definitely not be complaining. Sullivan managed a weak laugh, an actual laugh, which somehow turned into a coughing fit. When the spasms finally stopped, he looked up at me with eyes that contained an absolutely ridiculous amount of defiance. "Doc," he rasped, his voice like grinding metal, "I have survived worse than this. Give me a few hours. I will probably need a sandwich." "Do you have sandwiches?" I have no idea what you were asking for," I admitted, which was profoundly embarrassing because I am generally the one asking questions in medical situations, not the other way around. Over the next rotation, what humans call roughly 24 hours, something extraordinary began to occur. Sullivan's body started healing itself, not through sophisticated medical technology, not through advanced regeneration protocols. No, his body was simply working. His immune system was flooding the affected areas with white blood cells, biological soldiers sent to neutralize infection and manage damaged tissue. His bone fractures were already beginning to knit together, generating new calcium deposits and cellular structures at a pace that seemed almost methodical. "How?" I demanded, reviewing the diagnostic data again and again. "Your cellular division rate is accelerated, but not impossibly so. Your chemical signaling is crude compared to our protocols, yet somehow, it is working." "Humans are stubborn," Sullivan said from his recovery pod, where he was now actually sitting up, which I had explicitly advised against. "We survive, we adapt, we heal, we do not sit around waiting for fancy machines to do it for us. Those fancy machines are the difference between adequate medical treatment and," I paused, searching for the correct human word Tilak had provided, "and dying like animals in the dirt." "Sometimes we do that too," Sullivan admitted, "but we usually come back from it angrier and more determined." This was profoundly irrational. By the 3rd rotation, Sullivan was walking around my medical bay like he owned it. His injuries were, impossibly, mostly resolved. The broken bones were rigid again. The internal bleeding had stopped on its own. His neural swelling had decreased through a combination of rest and his body's internal chemical management systems. He even helped Tilak organize the medical supply inventory, which was both helpful and deeply offensive to my professional standards. "You realize," I said to him as he cheerfully catalogued supplies with my assistant, "that you should not be functional. Your recovery time violates every medical principle I have been trained in." Sullivan paused, holding a container of what humans called antibiotics in his hand. He turned to me with a grin that suggested genuine amusement at my distress. "You know what I have learned in my life?" he asked. "The universe does not care about your medical principles, Kel-Varn. Humans survive because we refuse to accept the rulebook. We break it. We ignore it. We write a new one while we are busy not dying. That is the least scientific thing I have ever heard," I responded, though I was already making notes in my personal research database. Something about human physiology, about their strange combination of fragility and resilience, was beginning to fascinate me in a way that made my sensory organs oscillate irregularly. I had just spent 3 rotations proving that my expertise was insufficient, and I had absolutely no idea that this was only the beginning of what would become the most challenging, frustrating and weirdly educational experience of my entire existence. 5 rotations after Marcus Sullivan should have died, the Vethrid Collective received an emergency transmission from the Outer Territories. A massive iron storm was approaching Station Omega-7. Not just any storm, mind you, but a catastrophic electromagnetic phenomenon that occurred once every 1,000 rotations. The station's shields were failing. We had approximately 18 hours before total system collapse. Everyone panicked. Everyone except Sullivan. I found him in the hydroponics sector, actually tending to the plant samples we maintained for atmospheric purposes. His movements were fluid now, stronger than they should have been after such devastating trauma. The man was infuriating in his calmness. "We need to evacuate," I informed him perhaps more urgently than necessary. The ion storm will render all electronic systems inert. Our medical equipment will be useless. Our life support will fail. The entire station faces catastrophic. Yeah, I know, Sullivan interrupted, not even looking up from adjusting the nutrient flow to a Tyrrellian fern. Sounds bad. So what is the plan? The plan is survival through departure, I snapped. We board emergency vessels. Sullivan finally turned to face me, and his expression held something that looked remarkably like pity. Kel-Varn, you have been treating me for 5 days. Tell me something. In that time, have I shown any signs of weakness? Any indication that I cannot adapt to changing circumstances? I wanted to argue, profoundly wanted to argue, but the data did not support any such claim. Instead, I found myself saying something I had never said before in my entire medical career. No, I admitted, you have not. Then trust me when I tell you that humans have survived far worse than electromagnetic interference. We once survived ice ages. We survived plagues that killed billions. We survived nuclear wars that turned our planet into an irradiated wasteland and came back from it angrier and smarter, a little electromagnetic pulse. That is just another Tuesday for us. Sullivan said this with such absolute conviction that I found myself questioning 3,000 rotations of medical superiority in the space of approximately 30 seconds. Tilak appeared in the hydroponic sector entrance, his crystalline frame reflecting the artificial light in jagged patterns. Kel-Varn, the storm is now projected to arrive in 16 hours instead of 18. The computational models suggest we should initiate emergency protocols immediately. How many species have protocols for electromagnetic interference at this magnitude? Sullivan asked me directly. Approximately 217, I replied automatically. But none of them are designed for humans. Sullivan smiled. It was an infuriating smile. See, that is your problem right there. You design everything around species that operate like you do. Species that depend on technology to survive. Species that break down when the machines stop working. We do not break down, I protested. We are sophisticated. We are evolved. You are dependent, Sullivan countered, standing up and brushing plant matter from his medical recovery garments. Humans are different. When technology fails, we do not immediately collapse into non-functionality. We have backup systems, biological ones. We have instinct. We have intuition. We have something called stubbornness that your species apparently did not evolve. The storm hit approximately 14 hours later. It was, without exaggeration, apocalyptic. The electromagnetic pulse radiated outward from the ion formation like the fury of a newborn star. Every electronic system on the station flickered once, twice, and then died. Permanent death. Not dormant. Not recoverable. Dead. The lights went out. The life support systems ceased functioning. The medical equipment became nothing more than useless sculptures. The communications array rendered inert. The thermal regulation systems? Offline. The gravity stabilizers. Nothing but silent monuments to our technological dependence. In the darkness and cold that followed, I experienced something I had never felt before. It was called fear. My species relies on technology to maintain our biological processes. Our internal temperature regulation depends on environmental stabilizers. Our atmospheric requirements are extremely specific. The sudden loss of all this support should have resulted in immediate system failure across multiple biological parameters. Tilak was panicking, actual panicking. His sensory organs were oscillating wildly, and he kept making high-pitched vocalizations that suggested imminent shutdown. Kel-Varn, I cannot feel the temperature regulation. My core temperature is rising. This is not survival. This is... Calm yourself, I commanded, though I was experiencing my own significant internal dysregulation. We must find a solution. We must access backup power. We must... Kel-Varn, Sullivan's voice cut through the darkness like a beacon. Come here. Both of you. We found him in the lower quarters where the station's original structural framework remained. It was an old section, rarely used, maintained only for historical purposes. Sullivan had gathered every available insulation material, every thermal blanket, every piece of fabric that existed on the station. He had created a shelter, a small chamber where he had managed to concentrate what limited heat sources remained. Fire, he explained simply, gesturing to the controlled burn he had somehow managed to create from combustible materials. Real fire. Actual combustion. Not controlled plasma, not precisely regulated thermal output, but the chaotic, beautiful, ancient method of heat generation that humans had relied upon for thousands of years before they developed anything resembling modern technology. That is, I started, then stopped. My linguistic processes could not formulate a response. That is extraordinary. It is basic survival, Sullivan corrected. Animals do this, humans do this. We gather, we create shelter, we generate heat, we survive. No computers required, no fancy equipment, just biology, instinct, and refusing to accept that anything can kill us. Over the next 30 hours, as the ion storm raged outside the station, and every electronic system remained completely inert, I learned more about biological resilience than I had in 3,000 rotations of medical study. Sullivan taught Tilak how to regulate breathing to maintain body heat. He showed us which materials could be used for insulation. He identified which food stores could be consumed safely without electronic processing. He demonstrated water purification using simple filtering techniques that predated my entire civilization. But most importantly, he showed us something that our advanced medical training had never covered. He showed us that survival is not about having the most advanced technology. Survival is about adaptability. It is about refusing to accept that circumstances dictate outcome. It is about something deeper than data, something called resilience. When the emergency repair teams finally arrived 48 hours later and restored power to the station, I found myself doing something completely unprecedented. I was taking notes from a patient, not clinical notes about his biology, but philosophical observations about his species. The Vethrid had spent millennia perfecting medical science. We had achieved what we believed to be perfection in biological management and treatment. We had created protocols and procedures and systems that worked flawlessly for our species, but we had never accounted for a species like humans. Humans are not perfect. Their biology is inefficient. Their bodies are prone to catastrophic failure. They experience pain constantly. They require sleep for no logical reason. They process emotions that have no direct survival benefit. They are, by every rational measure, suboptimal, and yet, they refuse to die. They refuse to accept limitations. They refuse to believe that the universe's rules apply to them. They break, they bleed, they suffer, and then they somehow get back up again and keep moving forward with an attitude that suggests the universe is personally insulting them by challenging their existence. On the day Sullivan was finally cleared for departure from Station Omega-7, I found myself experiencing something that could only be described as genuine affection for my patient. This was highly irregular. Such emotions were not part of my professional protocols. "Thank you," I said to him as he prepared to board the transport vessel that would return him to his own people. "You have taught me more about medicine than all my academic training combined." Sullivan extended his upper appendage toward me in what I later learned was called a handshake. His grip was firm. His expression was warm. "You are a good doctor, Kel-Varn," he said. "You just need to learn that sometimes the best medical treatment is not about having all the answers. Sometimes it is about having the flexibility to admit that you do not know everything. And sometimes it is about letting your patient do what they do best." "And what is that?" I asked. "Surviving," Sullivan said simply. "That is what we do. We survive. We always do." After he departed, I did something that no Vethrid medical technician had ever done before. I filed for a research grant. I requested authorization to study human physiology, not as a problem to be solved, but as a biological marvel to be understood. I requested permission to actually learn from humans instead of simply treating them. The Vethrid Collective approved my request. 3,000 years of medical evolution, and it took one bleeding broken human, who refused to follow the rules to show us that we did not have all the answers. We had the advanced technology, we had the sophisticated protocols, we had the perfect systems, but we did not have what humans had. We did not have that inexplicable, illogical, absolutely infuriating determination to survive against all probability. We did not have stubbornness. That night, as I reviewed all my notes about Marcus Sullivan and his impossible recovery, I made a personal log entry, one that would never appear in any official Vethrid medical database. Today I learned that survival is not about having the best equipment, it is not about the most advanced technology, it is not about perfecting the system. Survival is about something infinitely more powerful. It is about the absolute refusal to accept that anything in the universe can defeat you. Marcus Sullivan taught me that. A human, a creature we considered biologically inferior, a patient who should have died and simply decided not to. If I have learned anything from this experience, it is this. Never underestimate the humans. Their weakness is actually their greatest strength, and that strength is something we might never truly understand. But that does not mean we should stop trying to learn. I looked out at the stars beyond Station Omega 7, at the vast universe full of species and civilizations, all believing in their own superiority, and I wondered how many of them had met a human yet. How many of them would make the same discovery I had, that in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, the most dangerous, most resilient, most impossible to kill species was the one that looked at the rules and simply said no. The humans were coming, and the universe would never be quite the same.